Hey everyone, I'm Ian McCarthy of Lifting for Life, and today I'm bringing you the 13th installment of the Lifting for Life Q&A series, in which I answer your questions on video in under 5 minutes. And today's video is a follow-up to the 11th episode in this series, as I received a comment in response to that video which really struck me and caused me to consider a question which I'd like to answer. So, I do apologize for answering a question which is somewhat of my own creation, but I'm certainly hopeful it will be valuable to you, and I hope that you're not offended in me deviating from the usual approach with this series. And I will note that moving forward, I'm very intent on answering as many questions as possible exactly as asked from folks. Indeed, I have a document with tons of questions saved, so I will get to those. So the comment came from Jeff Nippard, who some of you might know of as being someone who, unlike me, actually looks like he performs resistance training. And he said the following: this was a very good question. I was struck by how utilitarian your reply was. It seems to me there could be a possibility that long-term ought to be more heavily weighted in its own right, even if the net happiness is lower because of the short-term dissatisfaction required to get there. Thoroughly enjoyed the video. So I think the question to which Jeff is alluding is roughly, which is more valuable, maximizing happiness now, given the context in which, to the degree possible given the context in which you're operating, or at some point reaching the absolute peak of happiness possible for you as a human being. And at the risk of disappointing folks, I want to say, given the 2 days in which I've been thinking about this, that it isn't readily apparent to me one or the other is more valuable. Rather, I think they are both extremely valuable, and I would seek to acquire both, for lack of a better term. First, let's speak to the value of reaching that peak. A means of illustrating this is to ask the question, if you could reach that peak for you as a human being, whatever that means in practice, we don't need to know what that means in fact, but just imagine the state of being as happy as you could ever be in any context. Would you be willing to shorten your life and even diminish total happiness? Let's think of happiness as something we can quantify. Total units of happiness go down, but for some period of time you reach that peak. Would you do that? I don't think everyone would say yes. Indeed, I think a significant block of folks would say no, but my intuition is that a majority of people would say yes, they would take that hit. So that peak, reaching that peak, is more valuable than simply acquiring a certain amount of happiness over a lifetime. And this at least suggests to me, again, given the 2-day analysis, which I'll say straight out, I'm sure is imperfect and I will refine over time, that that peak is really valuable. Indeed, if we were to dig into it a little bit, and I'm realizing I'm going to go over time, so apologies for that, I would be really interested to see where folks would land in terms of how much time they would be willing to give up to reach that peak and for how long. So would you have someone who would say, if I'm here for 1 day, I would be willing to die at age 40 instead of 80. Or someone else would say, well, I would be willing to shorten my life, but it would need to be like 10 years of this, and I would accept that and give up 20 years of my life. So it would be interesting to see where people land, but again, my sense is that a majority of people would land in that direction. And actually, just realized, given folks will actually, more people than just me will watch this, I'd be curious as to your responses. Let me know below which direction you think you would go in. So I hope that's sufficient in discussing the value of reaching the peak of happiness possible for you. However, I don't think that tells us being as happy as you can be now doesn't matter or is less valuable or not valuable. Because, and this answer is more, I know Jeff mentioned how utilitarian my previous answer was. This answer is perhaps more pragmatic. The current moment is the only moment you ever actually have. And given there's no guarantee that you can get to that peak, even if everything you're doing now is right, there isn't a guarantee that, I always use the example, no guarantee you won't get hit by a bus, no guarantee, gosh, what could happen? Given current events, thermonuclear war seems more likely than in the past. Whatever it might be, again, there isn't a guarantee you get there. So that, I think, increases the value of happiness at in the current moment. Really poorly phrased, I apologize. Now, interestingly, I don't feel that there's really tension between these, fundamentally. In other words, I don't think it's... I recognize that in practice, in some instances, you might have to choose between short-term happiness and reaching the peak of happiness down the road. But I don't think they're fundamentally incompatible. So my practical suggestion to turn this into something that people can act on, because I feel it's in the past I've tended too much in the direction of giving non-actionable commentary. So what I really try to do in my own life, this has benefited me tremendously, and this is what I suggest to you, is to simultaneously set the bar really high for what you hope and desire and aim to accomplish in life. And the phrasing which occurred to me in thinking about this is conceive of your absolute fantasy, and provided it's at all within the realm of plausibility, shoot for that. Meaning, if you're the person who really wants to be president, but whatever is true of you realistically precludes you from being president, but it is plausible, given all of your characteristics and you do all the right things, that you could be the president of a mid-size company, then shoot for that, do everything you can do to get there, and that would not, in fact, that perhaps wouldn't represent the absolute peak of happiness for you, but that would represent the peak that you could actually accomplish in your lifetime in the real world. So raise that bar and shoot for that while simultaneously lowering the bar for what makes you happy in the present moment. And a phrase which occurred to me is, it's almost embarrassing how little it takes for me to be happy now. And I'll just say straight out, because I've alluded to this before in YouTube videos, and I've discussed it pretty extensively on Snapchat and maybe Facebook. I can't even remember where I say stuff now, but realistically, I still do suffer from major depression. And it was very, very severe in the past. And my default in the past was to be very deeply unhappy. And I have benefited a ton from, again, lowering the bar for what it takes right now for me to be happy. I mean, I'm happy filming this video, but more than that, I'm happy I have this computer. I really like this brick. I mean, I genuinely can be happy as a result of the fact that I really like brick. I like the view I have, which is of another building across the street, because I appreciate architecture. 2 nights ago, when I was considering this, I was on the way to the gym, and I was listening to a film score composed by a gentleman named Atli Orverson, whose name I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. And one of the cues started only 3 notes in the first 10 seconds or so. And I almost teared up. I found it so beautiful. I mean, that was pretty damn close, I think, to as happy as I could be as a human being, and that's all it took. But at the same time, I have goals which I very well might not accomplish. I think it's overwhelmingly likely I will, and I'm doing everything I can to get there. But at the same time, I'm doing everything I can do to be happy in the process. So this video turned out way better than I thought it would be. Thank you so much for watching over time. I apologize. I could split this in half. upload it as 2 videos and put a ton of ads on it and make 60 cents. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. If you enjoyed the video, like it. By the way, I won't put ads on it. I never put ads on any of my videos at this point. Like it, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, share the video with anyone who you might know who you think might benefit from this, or maybe don't share it with people you really dislike because they don't deserve it. And I will see you next time. By the way, totally joking. You should share it with people you dislike because they deserve to be happy too. Peace out.